When you go to a breakfast at a place called And Waffles, there's one thing you absolutely cannot do. You just cannot skip the waffle. And even though I normally avoid carbs whenever possible, for reasons many people who know me would fully understand, I decided to take one for the team. And for that, I'm glad I did. Because after today's visit, I can tell you this much. At And Waffles, the waffle isn't an afterthought. Very well could be the star. But does that make this one of the best 5 breakfast spots in the valley? Well, that's what I came to find out. Hi, I'm Frank Spencer, Mr. Chatsworth, and today I continue my search for the best breakfasts in the valleys. Now, this stop took us to And Waffles in Woodland Hills, located on Ventura Boulevard, and from the very beginning, I have to tell you, I knew the place deserved serious consideration, not just because of the name, but because if you put waffles front and center in your brand, you don't have an option. You'd better deliver. And I'm happy to say, in at least one very important way, they absolutely did. Let's start with what I ordered. I went with corned beef hash, like always, 3 eggs over easy, and hash browns. Now, normally, that would also come with toast. But instead of toast, I requested a waffle square. Because in my opinion, you simply cannot order breakfast at a place called And Waffles without tasting the waffle. That would be like going to a steakhouse and skipping the steak. And while carbs are not typically part of my regular routine, some have called me a carnivore, and not without reason. I made the sacrifice. And let me tell you something. I don't feel guilty. It was worth it. The waffle was light, crisp, and beautifully done. Each deep pocket held a pool of melting butter that tasted as though it had come fresh from the churn. And that's not an exaggeration. This was not a waffle thrown into a plate as filler. This was a waffle made with care, made with intention, and made to be remembered. It became very clear to me quickly that at And Waffles, waffles are not just a simple side note. They're not a decoration, and they're not something to justify the name on the sign. They quite seriously could be the star. And despite my normal eating habits, I didn't leave even the slightest morsel behind. That should tell you everything you need to know. So now let's talk about the corned beef hash. Flavor-wise, on point. The seasoning was very good and the portion was generous. This is not a disappointing plate by any means, but for me, truly elevated corned beef hash needs one more thing. It needs texture. I want that crispiness on the outside. I want that slightly caramelized edge that takes a very good corned beef hash and pushes it into the exceptional territory. And that was the one thing missing here. The flavor was there. The portion was there. The enjoyment was there. But the lack of crisp on the outside of the patty kept me, in my mind, from reaching the highest level. Now that might sound like small detail, and I recognize it is. But when you're talking about the best breakfast places in the valleys, small details matter. That's often exactly what separates very, very good from unforgettable. The 3 eggs over easy were prepared perfectly. The whites were set correctly. The yolks were absolutely beautiful. And everything on that front was exactly what you'd hope for. The hash browns were also excellent. Golden brown on the outside, moist and buttery on the inside with that texture you want when hash browns are done right. This is one of those places where the supporting cast on the plate clearly get attention too. And for me, that matters Because a great breakfast is not just about one item carrying the meal, it's about how everything else works together. Now, for those of you who are regular Valley diners, you already know that doing business on Ventura Boulevard often comes with its own unique challenges. Parking. Parking is often limited, it can be guarded and restricted, and many times it's not free. So I was pleasantly surprised that Find and Waffles does have limited parking behind the restaurant for those willing to go around the corner and take the alley. Head all the way to the end, and there's a back door waiting for you to enter this wonderful restaurant. That may sound like a small thing, but on Ventura Boulevard, bonus, it's worth mentioning. Because when parking is easier than expected, it improves the whole experience and before you ever sit down at the table. So now let's talk about the service. It was without question wonderful. Rachel was my server, and she did everything right. My coffee cup was never empty. The food came promptly, everything was served with a smile, and the meal arrived at the appropriate temperature. And the plates were removed quickly once I had finished. That kind of service for me matters. In fact, service alone would be enough reason for me to recommend this restaurant, because good service changes the entire feeling of a meal. It makes you feel welcome, it makes you feel cared for, and it makes you want to come back. And in this case, Rachel, 2 thumbs up. You absolutely delivered on that experience. So now we arrive at the big question. How does And Waffles rank among my top 5 breakfast spots in the valleys? Not so fast. We're not quite ready to reveal that yet. We still have one more classic American grill to explore before I can put all these restaurants in order. And that final stop matters because once the last breakfast is in the books, then the ranking begins. And that's when things are going to get very interesting. Will the Junkyard hold its position as one of the most memorable experiences in the series? Or will one of the delis rise to the top? Will And Waffles make a serious push because of its service and its namesake star? Or will the final entrant surprise us all? For that, stay tuned. If you've eaten at And Waffles in Woodland Hills, I'd love to know what you order and what you think of the restaurant. And if you think there's a breakfast spot in the valley that deserves to be in this conversation, drop it in the comments. I promise you, I read every single one. And if you're thinking about selling your home, I wrote a free guide for you. It's called Avoiding a Failed Sale, How to Sell Smart and Walk Away Without Regret. You can download it at mrchatsworth.com/ebook. And until next time, I'll see you around the neighborhood.